Hello, everyone. It's Michelle with Twin Flame Warriors. Welcome to the 6th installment in our podcast series, Portrait of a Twin Flame. Today's portrait subject is Suzanne. We're trying something new by breaking these hour or more long interviews into bite-sized listening chunks. Please let us know what you think of the new format, or if you want to be a guest. Our email is podcast@twinflamewarriors.com. Before we begin our first of 4 episodes with Suzanne, we want you to know that we offer coaching, mentoring, past life regression, card reading, and other services that could benefit you on your journey. Check out our menu today at twinflamewarriors.as.me. That's twinflamewarriors.as.me. Now, without further ado, I give you Portrait of a Twin Flame, Suzanne, Part 1. So, Suzanne, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background with all things spiritual, and then how you found out about the Twin Flame journey. Tell us your story.
I started a fundraising job. It's been about 5 years ago now. And I met this man who, the first time I saw him, I looked at him and something told me that he was important. However, I had no idea why I felt that way about him, because I don't really think about people as being important or unimportant. I feel we're all equals. Whether they're your boss or a customer or a coworker, I treat everyone the same. So I met this man who I had no idea who he was, but something told me he was important to me. I should mention that I'm married. I've been married to my husband for over 16 years. I started this fundraising job for my daughters because they're both in dance. The first time that something strange happened with this man was I was working one day and I happened to look outside and I saw these 2 men fist fighting outside of the building. Instead of going to my manager like normally you would do, I looked at this man and I said, there's a fight outside. And when I looked at him, everything stopped. I could only see him and it felt like we were the only 2 people in the room, even though the room was packed with people. So that was the first strange thing that kind of happened with him. I had no idea what a twin flame was at the time. I never heard of the expression before. I knew about soulmates and I knew about, kindred spirits and people that you meet along your path, but I never heard of twin flames before.
What was his reaction when you said there's a fist fight outside? And
he looked at me, and so we had locked eyes for a second, and then right away he stood up and he looked outside the window to see what was going on. I couldn't see what anyone else in the room was doing because I could only see him. Like it felt like we were the only 2 people in the room at the time.
Probably the only 2 people in the universe, it felt like. I remember that moment on my journey. It was like everything else just disappeared and all you could feel and see was that other presence.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what happened, Michelle.
Yeah. So you didn't know the term twin flame at that time. How did you go find out? When were you prompted to do that? Was it soon after?
No. So it was quite a while after, but I started to see him more and more and recognize him. And even my coworkers would point out things about him. It's like people were trying to tell me to notice him. Just little things like one of my girlfriends that I worked with said that they were neighbors, like he just lived down the street from her and she never realized and then so she tells me the story about how she saw him one day doing yard work outside. Another coworker had mentioned something about him that I can't really go into detail because without giving away where I work. Anyway, so people were trying to get me to notice him, and I started looking for him because he would normally come in like later in the evening. So usually around 8:30, 9 o'clock. I didn't understand at the time, but I would start looking for him at about 8:30. I would just walk around the room and I would just keep looking at the door and waiting for him to come in. And I didn't understand why I was doing that. And then if he didn't come in, then I would be sad because I would be like, well, I guess I'm not going to see him tonight. So I would always be, watching for him or looking for him whenever I work.
You were just compelled to do it. I love the synchronicities, by the way. The universe was trying to get everybody around you to get curious and pay attention to this person.
So I still didn't know anything that was going on. I didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. One evening, I had worked a lot over a 2-week period. And one evening I was working with a coworker who had mentioned that they were neighbors. And I said to her, I said, I haven't seen your neighbor in 2 weeks. Well, 5 minutes later, sure enough, I look at the door and there he was standing there. Right after I realized this, though, our workplace ended up closing due to COVID for the first time. I didn't really think about him too much. It was a strange connection, I knew, but there wasn't really much there other than the fact that I would always look for him. And I liked to see him when he would come in, but we didn't really talk when I would see him. So it ended up closing. So I didn't think too much about it. You know, I had my summer off from fundraising because it was closed. But then when it reopened again, this is when he started chasing me. So I don't know what happened during that closure, but I think something must have happened to him on his side. He must have realized something because when my workplace reopened, he started to actively come in and look for me. He started doing strange things. Like he told me, he said, I only want to buy from you. And he told everyone else that was working there the same thing, that he only wanted to buy from me. He started doing things like he would hold his hand out. He wanted me to touch his hand. He would never initiate touching my hand unless once in a while he would put money right into my hand. He was trying to show me that he was really interested in me and that he liked me. He also had a friend that he would come in with, and his friend would often text him. And, you know, I could tell that he was texting him, and because he would show up, you know, a half an hour later or whatever, come sit with his friend, and then they would just pay attention to me for the whole night. I should also mention that during this time, he didn't come in with his wife very often. He only came in with his wife once. I think I saw them together, but most of the time he would come in by himself.
So he and his friend, you would notice them, or they would be paying attention to you. Were you interacting with them at that time, or was it just like a distant interaction?
I wasn't interacting with them, but it did scare me a lot as well. So I guess that this was the runner-chaser phase. He was chasing me and I was trying to run away from the connection because it really scared me. So I wouldn't touch his hand. I wouldn't, a lot of times when I would go up to him, because he told me that he only wanted to buy from me. So I always sold to him. But a lot of times when I would go up to him to sell to him, I wouldn't be able to talk. It would feel like my throat would be closed off or my heart would be in my throat. And I realized at this point that I did really like him, and we would lock eyes once in a while. And he just, the way that he looked at me, he made me feel so beautiful. And I've never had anyone ever look at me like that before. Not my husband, not even on our wedding day. No one's ever looked at me the way he does. And at the same time, all this was going on, it really scared me because I didn't understand these feelings, and it was really intense. And I've never had this connection with someone before that was so intense. So much attention was put on me from him that it really scared me. And so I think I was trying to run away from the connection, even though I was forced to interact with him because I was the only one that he would buy from. Even though I realized I really liked him, it was scary at the same time, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of us have traumas, relationship traumas, fears of others, fears of ourselves, fears of trusting ourselves in any kind of a relationship, let alone something as intense as this. You don't know what to do with this totally foreign experience. Tugs at your heart and your stomach, and you may not even know about like your chakra system, but how everything lights up inside of you, and your body looks for that person, and whether you want it to or not, it reacts. What prompted the next step? What happened next?
One night when I was working with him, I got the idea to stand closer to him than I normally would. And I was totally in shock because I could feel him. Like I felt like I was standing right next to him and touching him, even though I wasn't. And I could tell that he felt it too, because he turned around and looked at me, and I think he was a little bit shocked. This had happened a few times, but then we found out that our workplace was going to be closed again due to COVID. So the last night that I worked, they announced that it was going to be closed due to COVID again. He came in and I was just sad. I was so sad because I didn't know, we didn't have any connection outside of work, and I didn't know when I would see him again. I was just really sad. And then he didn't even say goodbye to me that night. So that made me even sadder. that was it. It closed due to COVID. So this was at the end of November 2020, just before the announcement of closing due to COVID again. I had, I know nothing's accidental when you have a twin flame.
Right.
But I wasn't searching for him on Facebook, but I found his profile picture. So I just added him as a friend and he accepted. I never contacted him on Facebook. I just added him as a friend. But then when it closed due to COVID, I realized that his birthday was a couple days later in December. So I sent him a message. I just said, "Oh, happy birthday. I hope you have a great day." And he commented and he said, "Oh, thanks." And he put a smiley face, which made me really happy. All of December, I couldn't see him. I started to obsess about him. I started thinking about him from morning to night. I couldn't think about anything else. It didn't matter what I tried to do. I just couldn't stop thinking about him.
Yeah, the obsession is overpowering for a reason. That's the other copy of your soul right there. The universe wants you to be close to them.
Right. And I never experienced anything like that before. I'm not an obsessive person. I don't obsessively think about people or anything. So this was all new to me as well. And it was really painful. During this time, all I could think was, why didn't I touch his hand when I had the chance? Why didn't I pay more attention to him? Why didn't I talk to him more when I had the chance? I don't know when I'm going to see him again. And these thoughts would run through my head all day long. I couldn't stop thinking about it. My birthday is just 6 days after his birthday. So he wished me a happy birthday on Facebook as well. We still hadn't talked. But then thinking about that, it made me think about reaching out to him and messaging him. So I did. Right before Christmas, I messaged him. And we ended up talking for 2 hours. And that was the beginning of our texting back and forth stage where I would message him at night and we'd end up spending 2 hours, 2-hour conversations just as friends. Like it was nothing. It was purely innocent. We just talked as friends on Messenger. During this time, I also started having dreams about him. So I had a dream that we were just two souls coming together. But then my next dream I had it was like a nightmare. I was working at my fundraising job and his wife came in and she walked up to me and she told me to stay away from her husband. I went to his workplace to find him to tell him what his wife said to me. And he reached out and he touched my hand and he said, "Going to okay." And then I woke up. Well, I ended up messaging him the next night and we were talking and then he became really quiet all of a sudden. I said, well, like he seemed distracted. So I was just like, well, I'll just let you go, good night, which was one of the things that we always said good night to each other. We would say each other's name, good night, so-and-so. And he'd say good night, Suzanne. And then we'd let each other go. So I said good night to him. And then not even a minute later, his wife messaged me right after I had this dream. And she said, "Why are you so friendly to my husband?" And she brought up one of our conversations. The conversation was innocent. He didn't give me a lot of compliments during the time that we had ever talked or anything, but he just had mentioned what a good worker I was. And I think something about how, I always remember what people order. And then I just sent him a smiley face. And he said, "Did I make you blush?" And I said, "Yeah, you did." And then I mentioned to him, I said that he was my favorite customer. And then he said, "Now I'm blushing." So that was the conversation that she relayed back to me.
Innocent on the surface, but very full of meaning, whether you realized it at the time or not. She picked up on that. She's a soulmate. She knows what's going on, whether she acknowledges it or not, that there's something happening with her soulmate husband, right? She can feel the change in him that's been catalyzed by this.
I didn't reply to her message, but the next day he messaged me and I could tell his wife was right there when he messaged me. He asked me for her. He said, "You just like me as a friend, right?" And I said, "Yes, I just like you as a friend." And he's like, "For my wife." So he went on to set boundaries about things that we could and couldn't talk about. When we ended our conversation, I just felt really hurt. Like I couldn't help how I felt. Like looking back at it now, I know that his wife had every right to be upset, and I shouldn't have been, messaging him all the time. And because he's married, but for something in me that I just couldn't help it. But I did feel hurt because I felt like we would never be able to talk again. This triggered the start of my awakening. So this was in February now of 2021. And that night, after feeling really hurt, I felt this light bulb just go off in my soul. And for the first time in my life, I could feel my soul.
Thanks for joining us for the first in our 4-part series, Portrait of a Twin Flame, Suzanne. Tell your friends. Share it on social. We love your support and good words. If you'd like to learn more about Justin's and my twin flame journey, please consider picking up our novella series. It's available on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and Apple audiobooks today. It's called Souls on Fire, Memoirs of a Twin Flame True Love Journey. Look for parts 1 and 2. If you'd like to share your story of twin flame connection, please reach out to us at podcast@twinflamewarriors.com. Maybe we'll share your story in an upcoming episode. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.